assortment, of eclectic, ASMR, there we go, okay, so, today, we're doing finally the second part of the book recommendations video. And speaking of the check-in for today, is, have you read something recently? Reading is such an essential thing to sort of exercising your humanity, kind of. I find that it's a really enriching experience. There we go. It can teach you a lot about language. It can teach you a lot about media literacy and all of these different things. So I think it's definitely something to definitely like keep on top of. Honestly, if you're reading the news, if you're reading magazine articles, if you're reading books, it doesn't really matter, just so long as you're taking like a second, 10 minutes out of your day to kind of read something, because like I said, it's so good for your brain and you kind of crave it. It's also a nice moment of quiet. Okay, so this video, I know I say this all the time, but this video is going to be slightly quicker just because I have a ton of stuff to do today. So we're going to get into today my favorite books, and the reason why I think that these are my favorite books is just because they have something unique, they have something cool about them, and then also they're just good stories. One of them I do not have here. It is on loan to a friend, and it is probably my second favorite up there. So that is unfortunate, but I have one that can be like a stand-in. So I'm gonna get all of the books, and then we're just gonna get started. Okay, so first one. I'm kind of going in order of how much I like the book, but keep in mind, all of these are like, this is very close to my top 5, Yeah, no, this is my top 5. So all of these are absolutely fantastic for their certain reasons. So the first one is The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. I'm a huge TJ Klune fan, massive TJ Klune fan. TJ Klune always has some sort of LGBTQIA content. There's always a very sweet twist. It's always saying something about life, as like existing as an LGBTQIA plus person. There's just a lot to love about TJ Klune's writing. This book, I will warn people, it's funny. This book is like, I shouldn't say not funny, haha, but it's interesting. This book, The Extraordinaries, is the first in a series of 3, and these books I find to be either so compelling that I cannot put them down, or there are parts of them that are very, very compelling. The final book is actually probably my least favorite. Not because I don't like it. I really like the book. It's just, I think it spends too much time on a gimmick that I don't think it needs to. also a twist that is needlessly cruel to these specific characters. It works perfectly. It works to make you hate the people that the main characters are fighting against. But like I said, I think it is almost too cruel to the main characters, especially because the other thing about this series is it is very young adult. This book is probably it's the most written for a young audience out of all of them. I think that you could pick this up as an adult and very easily read it without worrying about it seeming too juvenile. Absolutely, like it's a book that deals with themes that a broad swath of people can relate to. But if you are looking for a book for your child, for your 12 to 17-year-old child, this is the book. This is the book because it deals with LGBTQIA plus themes very well and very normally. It deals with the main character has ADHD, and it's very well handled. It's very well handled, and it is talked about in a very humanizing way, rather than just being like, well, that's my ADHD brain. Like, no, it's not that. It's got a lot of good content surrounding that. And then the other thing it has is, I think it has a lot of great jumping off point elements to start conversations with your kids, with your teenage children, because there are a few very, very mild sexual themes in the book in a very it's well dealt with for the audience that it's aiming for, because I think it starts a lot of questions, and it is also very positive surrounding physical intimacy, which I think we need more of. Good sexual education in society can help reduce things like teen pregnancy. It can help reduce things like teen STI infections, which are very real issues, and I hate to say this, it's going to happen anyway. So you might as well have something that is a good jumping off point for that. Like I said, the writing can sometimes veer a little bit juvenile in a little bit of, in a way. This book, TJ Klune says it themselves, is a love letter to fan fiction and fan fiction culture, and it surrounds superheroes, and the relationship that ends up coming out of the book is very, very sweet. It's very, very sweet, and it's very unexpected. It's very unexpected. I will say, I did not see the twist coming. Generally, I'm pretty good at parsing out what's going to happen, but this book, I don't know, I didn't see it. The certain characters that the twist revolves around are very not the characters that I thought that they would have ended up being, is what I'll say about that. So, The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. If you want an easy read, if you want a very fun read, go for it. Okay. So the next is there we go. The next is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. Now, I went into this book completely not knowing what I was in for, and I ended up with one of the most compelling high fantasy worlds that I've ever read. It is such a well-constructed world. There is so much history and culture within this world that gets expanded on in the second book, which is out right now, and then I'm not sure. I think the final book might be coming out this summer, but this is such a good book. Rebecca Roanhorse is an Indigenous author, and this is essentially what would the fantasy equivalent of pre-Columbian America look like. And I think that this encapsulates that sort of immaculately. There is so much mystery to this land. There is so much history to this land. Like, you really do feel like you're walking into a world that is so well lived in, and the characters have such a relationship to, that it is, you are compelled for them. It has many LGBTQIA plus themes. It has extensive use of neo pronouns for certain characters. It has a lot of same sex to also like pansexual relationships in it. It's just such a well written book, and I think it does such a good job of capturing that idea of non-European gender and sexuality frameworks that have really been imposed on the majority of the planet, to, I would say, people's detriment. The story is compelling. The main, the character that you're first introduced to, who's like a vessel for the crow god, is such a good character. The combat, there are fight scenes in this book that had me pounding, like my heart pounding. This is such a good book, such a good book. Buy this. If you are a fan of fantasy, buy this. If you are not a fan of fantasy, maybe steer clear, but I would say that this is a pretty good entry point into the fantasy genre, because the world is so well constructed for you that it really ends up being like, you feel like you're not doing a lot of the legwork to try and like figure out the whole, like, the world. Like, there's no like just exposition vomits in there. It's all told so well through the story that I think anybody could enjoy this. But yeah, if you are not a fantasy person, if you've never read a fantasy book that you like, probably stay away from it. But such a good book, such a good book. It is honorable mention time. It is honorable mention time. This is In the Shadow of Lightning by Brian McClellan. You will see him again in this video, but if you want another very well-developed, high-concept fantasy world with one of the most interesting magic systems I have ever read, yep, hello, buy this book. It is incredibly high concept. If you do not like fantasy, if you don't like flintlock fantasy, do not buy this book, because it is a behemoth of a book. It is such a, but it's so good. I don't know, like, it's such a, this book is so well written that it feels like I'm reading history. It honestly does. The battle scenes in this book, oh my god, the battle scenes in this book are so good. I don't think I've ever read combat better written than in this book. He has outdone himself, and you'll see that in one of the books that I recommend later. So the In the Shadow of Lightning, the Glass Immortals, book one of the Glass Immortals is what it says on the spine. Okay, so next book is a short but sweet one, To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. You've seen Becky Chambers on this channel before, because Becky Chambers is the perfect sci-fi writer. Like, such a brilliant speculative mind for what the future of like science fiction literature could be. This is such a good book. It follows like the expedition to a bunch of different star systems, and like what that would look like, and it explores the science of what that would look like, and it explores like what those planets would look like. My god, get this book. It's such a good book. She is a brilliant genius of science fiction. Modern classic. is a stand-in for the other one, but I do love this book. So this book that I'm holding right here is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. If you didn't know that, hello and welcome out from under the rock that you've been living under. This is essentially what kicked off like the gay romance novel craze. Dirty for sure. Just getting that out of the way. But the book that I actually want to talk about is called One Last Stop. This is a fantastic book, by the way. Buy it. It's a very easy read. But the book that I actually want to talk about is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. And One Last Stop is such a good book. It follows a lesbian couple. Well, no, it follows. I shouldn't say that. It follows two people who end up becoming a couple, which is right in the teaser, so I'm not spoiling anything. But essentially, it takes place in New York, and it has like a weird, not magical, but a weird, like fantastical twist to it, and it's so sweet. It's such a good character study. It made me fall in love with New York, and I've never been to New York before. So One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston is a fantastic book. Go get it. You'll love it. And especially because it has such prevalent LGBTQIA plus themes. They go to queer bars, they put on a giant drag performance. It's just it's so good. Okay, last book. Favorite book of all time. Favorite series of all time. This is Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. This book I bought in 2015. It was on the end cap at Indigo when it used to be called Chapters here. And I bought this book. I read it on a trip to Kelowna, which is a city in British Columbia. And I could not get enough. This is such a richly built world with such history. Like I said, if In the Shadow of Lightning feels like I'm reading history, this feels like I am reading like the compiled history of this world that Brian McClellan has built that is so rich, and there's such clear amounts of world building. The magic system in this book, fantastic. It's the magic system in this book is like meta commentary on the Industrial Revolution and what it did for society. Like what the battle scenes in this book, so good. The characters in this book, the main character, I would say the main character of this book, Field Marshal Tomas, who is the man that you see on the cover, who I would say is the main character for all three of the books in the trilogy, although it kind of like splits between him and his son Daniel, Daniel. Daniel. Field Marshal Tomas is such a compelling character, such a human character, and then also such a great character study on like the way that we seem to view historical figures. Like when you think of Otto von Bismarck, when you think of Napoleon Bonaparte, like that sort of larger than life genius kind of character, like complicated, morally complicated characters that we think of from our own history. Field Marshal Tomas is that person. This is such a good book. This is like, you need to get this book. I don't care if you don't like fantasy. This is such a fantastic book. There's a murder mystery going on. There's supernatural elements. There's gods walking the earth for the first time in forever, essentially. There's revolution. There's political commentary. There's royalist commentary. Oh my God, it's such a good book. Buy this book. Buy all of the books that I recommended, even In the Shadow of Lightning. Also buy Red, White, and Royal Blue, even though I was they're such good books. They're such good books. In my opinion, I have fantastic book taste. But anyway, like I said,